Hey, today's daf is daf nun hey. Okay, nun hey in Masechta Gittin. We're going to begin from nun Dalet Amud Beis. We're just going to cover a couple of stories of a takeoff off the Mishnah. Again, Mishnah discusses when Kayin brings a carbon and says, "Oh, I messed up." Right? If he messes up, really, we believe him. We believe him, and if they did it on purpose, they said, how does a kohen mess up? By thinking piggle thoughts. He says that the carbon, while he was sprinkling the blood of the carbon, he said, I want the meat of the carbon to be eaten in a few days from now. So that is a bad thought and spoken word that apostles a carbon. So if the kohen did it on purpose, he has to pay the Baal HaCarbon, the guy that brought the carbon, he has to pay him back, but not if he did it b'shoygig. Okay, so we're starting from right after the Mishnah, about like 8-9 lines after the Mishnah. Jetzt ungeheuben. Okay. Hahu de amale lechavre. A person said to his friend, a person said to his friend, Taharis osisi, the Taharis that I made, right? Taharis that I made, im chabiyoim ploini nitmu. Okay, the taharis that I made with you on that day became tamei. Hi, Lewis. We just began a little bit after the Mishnah on Nun Dalet Amud Beis. We're just going to catch up with a few stories. So we're talking about a person said to his friend, you hired me to make taharis, to help make taharis, your food clean, ritually clean, and I messed up. I made it tamei. Now he's a worker of yours, right? So do you believe him? Do you believe him? Because now he's saying that all the food that he made became tamei. So, and you deny him. You don't want to believe him. He was just a worker for you. Asi lekamid Rabami. So they came to front of Rabami. Amalei, he said, Shura Sadin, if you're denying it and you don't believe him, ein enemen, then the worker is not believed to say that, oh, while I was working with your food, I made it tamei. He's not believed. But Amal lefan of Rabasi said to Rabami, you telling me ein enemen? Rebbe Ata Oimer came, that's what you paskin. Hachyama Rabbi Yochanan, this is what Rabbi Yochanan said, Mishum Rabbi Yosi. Rabbi Yochanan said, in the name of Rabbi Yosi, that a person is believed. Ma'esa, what can I do? Torah haminatoi, the Torah believed the person. The Torah believed the worker to say, I made your taharis tamei. Where do we see the Torah believes the person? Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Bisna, he said, Kohen Gadol b'Yom Kippur yachiach. A Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, I'll prove it to you. Now, a Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur does the service all by himself. What happens? He walks out of the Kodesh Kedushin and he says, fellas, I messed up. I want you to know I had a piggle statement in the Kodesh Kedushin, and therefore the service is puzzle, is disqualified. The Omar, if he said piggle, Nehemin, because the Torah believes everybody who says piggle, even a Kohen Gadol, and we don't know if he was made the carbon piggle. It's only his hearsay that we believe him. So anybody, by extrapolation, we say that anybody who comes along and says, I made your Aydin Tamei, we would believe him. And how do we know that the Kohen Gadol is acting on a loan? Because the pasuk said, "V'chol adam lo yiyah ba'oil moed." Nobody is allowed to be in the Beis Hamikdash, in the oil moed, in the heichal, when the kohen is doing the service. And nevertheless, the Torah does say that if he comes out and says, "I made it piggle," we would believe him. Elalav mishum de mehemen. We always believe him. We always believe the kohen, even though it's his word against us. We don't our word. We hope he didn't mess up. So the Gemara says, "V'dilma desham ane depogel." Maybe the Kohen Gadol is only believe if we hear him from inside the heichal screaming out loud that I'm going to make this piggle. That's only then do we mitama. But if he comes out and we didn't hear anything, we wouldn't believe him. So the Gemara says that can't be. Ilav de mehemen. If we wouldn't believe the Kohen by himself by telling us this piggle, afagav desham ane. Even if we would have heard him say that it's piggle, nami lemehemen, we still wouldn't have believed him. Why? Because dilma delabasa hachi kamar. Maybe maybe he's trying to say, maybe he did the service and then screamed out loud, I'm making it pigel. So you don't have a proof just because you hear him say the word pigel that it is pigel. So it must be that you believe him. You believe his word. That's his word. That's it. No, you can't prove it, but the Torah believes his word. So the Gemara says, "V'dilma." No, maybe you don't believe the Kohen. We never believe the Kohen Gadol. The Kohen Gadol saying such a statement. If he says, "I made it pigel," we don't believe him. The only time the Torah says that you would believe the Kohen Gadol is because there's witnesses. The Chazin is the pishpush. You look at it. You saw through a opening into the Heichal. Believe it or not, there was a way to look into the Kodesh Kodashim while the Kohen Gadol was doing service. So, or hear what's going on and see him doing the service. So maybe only then, if we saw him do the service and say that he's doing pigel, then obviously, if he says I made it pigel, we believe him because we're also aligned with that because we saw it. But him alone, we wouldn't believe. So Kashya, it's very difficult to say that we believe somebody if we believe somebody saying I was matama somebody's food.
Why will he do it on purpose?
Yeah, he wants to do it on purpose.
Why? Well, it must be a reason. Maybe he didn't like the people over there.
Yeah, it could be because a Kohen Gadol was always in the second base of Migdash, was not always the biggest tzaddik. So he was at Tzeduki. Maybe he makes with the backhand over this over the whole avodah. The Gemara says like this. Another story. Hu da'asi lekamid Rabami. Hi Sheldon, we're on Nudal the base and we're finishing it almost to the bottom. Hu da'asi lekamid Rabami. A man came to Rab Abi. Amalei. He's a sofer. A man who's a sofer. He feels very guilty. He says he was hired, he was paid $100,000 to write somebody a Sefer Torah. And he told Rabbi Ami, he made a confession, Sefer Torah shekasafti liploini, the Sefer Torah that I wrote for so-and-so, askor shaloi loy kasaftim lishma. The Yud Kei Vav case in that Torah, I didn't write L'Shem Hashem. I was thinking something else. So really, it's a puzzle of Sefer Torah, basically. He says, I just sold somebody a puzzle Sefer Torah. So Rabbi Ami asked him a question. Amma Sefer Torah b'yad mi. Where is the Sefer Torah that you're saying that you wrote it in a puzzle way? Amalei, he said b'yad lakeach. I sold it already. Oh, Amalei. So Rabbi Ami said, you're not believed anymore. I neman ata lahafsid, that lahafsid scharecha is charcha. I believe you that the guy shouldn't have to pay you. Your entire $100,000 that he owes you for writing the Sefer Torah, he doesn't have to pay you. Because you're saying that you made a not kosher Sefer Torah. But I don't take your word 100%. But I don't believe you to cause a loss of the Sefer Torah. Since now the Sefer Torah is in somebody else's hand, you can't passel the Sefer Torah because it's not in your possessions anymore. So once something is not in your possession anymore, you cannot passel it. So since it's already in the purchaser's possession, I don't trust you. You said that it's a puzzle Sefer Torah. Great, you just now lost any wages, any money that he owes you for it. Amalei Rabbi Yirmiyah said, okay, why are you telling me that the person lost all his wages? I grant you that he lost the writings of Yud Kei Vav Kei in the mentionings of God's name, because he said the mentionings of God's name in the Sefer Torah is lost. I mean, he wrote it puzzle, fine. But Sachar the Sefer Torah Kule be Hifsid, why did he lose the entire Sefer Torah, the reward of the entire Sefer Torah? L'chaira, he wrote a Sefer Torah, okay. And maybe Rabbi Yirmiyah holds, but b'diavad, even if you didn't write Yud Kei Vav Kei L'Shem Shemayim, it's still a kosher Sefer Torah. So why would he lose his total $100,000?
He had a better customer.
Yeah, Amalei, and yes, Kol Sefer Torah she'ein askara shaloi ksuvas lishma. Any Sefer Torah that's not, that the Yud Kei Vav Keis, the Shem Hashems are not written l'shem lishman, l'shem Sefer Torah, l'shem Yud Kei Vav Kei, ein shava klum. It's not worth anything. Not that it's not worth anything. You can use that as a chumash, but it's not worth a Sefer Torah. So whatever the price of a Sefer Torah is, you lost it. So the Gemara says, what's the problem if somebody wrote a Sefer Torah and he wrote the Yud Kei Vav Kei not l'shem shemayim. You could correct it. Put a pen over it and start rewriting the Sefer Torah and just and ink over where it says Yud Kei Vav Kei, like they do by any Ksiva Sefer Torah, and you do it l'shem shemayim. Come on, who would hold to that case? Name it. So if you hold that it doesn't work, name it like Rabbi Yehuda. Must be you don't hold like Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says it works. This idea that you could re-ink it. The Tanam we learned in the Mishnah. You were going to write Yud Kei Vav Kei in a Sefer Torah. You're V'niskave Lichtav Yehuda. You're supposed to write Yud Kei Vav Kei, and you wrote, and you're thinking, oh, I'm going to write Yehuda. And you wrote the Yehuda without the word, without the dalet. So you did write Yud Kei Vav Kei, but you were thinking that you're writing the word Yehuda, but you forgot the dalet. So you wrote the Shem Shemayim without the Shema. So Ma'avir Olav Kulmus Makachi Div Rabbi Yehuda. You could correct it, put ink over it, and make it a holy name. But Chacham says it doesn't work. Ein Hashem in a Mufcha, it doesn't work. That's not the way to write Hashem's name. So if you hold in our Mishnah that once this person said that the Askaras, that the Sefer said every Askara I wrote in the Sefer Torah was Shloi Lishman, and we don't give him the way to correct it by making it, it must be Paskin like Rabbi Yehuda. Answers the Gemara, no. I feel it tame Rabbi Yehuda. You could paskin like Rabbi Yehuda. Ad kan like Rabbi Yehuda. When does Rabbi Yehuda say you could fix it? If you did it only one time. If you did it one time, he lets you to fix it. But the coolest Sefer Torah, if every Yud Kei Vav Kei in the Sefer Torah, you wrote it wrong, Rabbi Yehuda would not allow you to print it. Because what happens when you re-ink something that's written? It looks darker. So mishum the amechse kemenuma, you can make the Sefer Torah look like a polka dots because it's going to look like a leopard. In other words, it's going to be inked very hard in a lot of different places. Even Rabbi Yehuda says that would not be a way to correct it. Another story. A man came to Rababo, a Sefer, real, he regrets, and he sold the Sefer Torah. He said, Sefer Torah Shekasaftu, this Sefer Torah that I wrote for somebody else, Gvilin Shaloi Ibadtim Lishman. The whole parchment, Loi Ibadatim Lishman. I didn't do it Lishman. The parchment was made not L'Shem Sefer Torah, and therefore it's a puzzle of Sefer Torah. So Rabbi Avo asked him, Amalei Sefer Torah Biyad Mei. Where's the Sefer Torah now? Amalei, he said, Biyad Lakech. It's the hands of the purchaser. Amalei. So Rabbi Abo said to him, Bitoich Sha'at Neman Lahavsid Schorcha, Ataneman Lahavsid Sefer Torah. Because now you took a risk and you destroyed, you telling him by saying it's a puzzle Sefer Torah, you're saying that the guy doesn't have to pay you. Now I will believe that the whole Sefer Torah is also puzzle. Wow. So even though the Sefer Torah is in the hands of the purchaser, we'll tell this purchaser, listen, you have a Sefer Torah that's puzzle because the Sefer himself said it's puzzle. So Gemara asks, Maishna, we go to Donhei Amar Aleph. Maishna med Rabba Ami. Why did Rabba say different than Rabba Ami? Rabba Ami said that once it's in the hands of the purchaser, we don't believe the Sefer anymore. And here you do believe the Sefer, and we say now it's a puzzle of Sefer Torah. So the Gemara says, Hasam, over there, the case was, the guy said, the Sefer said, every Shem Shemayim I wrote was Shaloi Lishma. But maybe the Sefer held it wasn't such a big risk because he felt that B'di Eved, it's a good Sefer Torah. So he's going to lose a little bit of his money, but he wasn't going to lose, he didn't think he was going to lose his entire wage. So therefore, we say that you could passel yourself. We believe you. You could only passel yourself, but when it's in the hands of the purchaser, it's not passel. Hacha, but over here, Kevin the Kamasa Kuli Agre Va'asa Amar. The Sefer is saying the whole Sefer Torah is possible because the whole parchment was written. It was made Shloi Lishma. So he's basically saying, I'm out. I don't have to get paid. So Amar Kushta Kamar. Maybe we will say that he's taka saying the truth, and we would believe it. He's taking the whole thing is true. And therefore, we tell the guy when it's in his hands, in the purchaser's hand, that wait, we believe the Sefer, and it's a puzzle Sefer Torah, you shouldn't use it. New Mishnah. Hey, id Rabbi Yochanan ben Gidgoida. Rabbi Yochanan ben Gidgoida said a testimony. He said the following 4 dinim. Interesting dinim. Ala chareshes. Hachareshes is a woman who's a deaf mute, right? So she's like somewhat like an imbecile. Shehisiya aviyah. Her father married her off. So it's a kedushin daraisa. It's a kedushin darabana, because chareshes. Let's say he has a girl who's a deaf mute. I mean, it's not really a good kedushin. So anyway, she leaves beget. That means you can give her a get. Why can the husband give her a get? A guy who's married to an imbecile, because you don't need her to have intelligence to accept a get. A get is given even against the will of the woman. So even if the man is married to a chareshes, a deaf mute, the get he could still divorce this type of a woman. The next thing is like this: Ba'al katana bas Yisrael, a katana, a young girl who's like 7 years old. She's a Yisrael. Shenisis l'kohen. She got married to a kohen, right? Let's say her father married her off, or let's say it wasn't her father, but her brothers married her off. Let's say she doesn't have a father, and her mother and brother found her a shidduch. So this shidduch with the kohen is only a kedushin derabanan. We had this many times. Shoichelis betruma. She's permitted to eat truma derabanan. The imesa, if she dies, her possessions, she's a katana bala yarsha. Her husband, even though it's only a kedushin rabbanim, the husband inherits her. These are halachas that Rabbi Yochanan ben Gudgud said testimony that this is the way it should be. The third thing he said, Bal hamrish hagozul shabana babira. A guy stole a beam, a real beam, and he built it into his palace. Right? Really, the beam is still intact. So it's a stolen beam. So technically, we should require him to demolish his house, and if he wants to do tshuva, and demolish your house and return the beam to where you stole it from. The truth is, we don't make him demolish his house. Sheyitelas damav, he should just take the value of that beam and pay the person he stole it from. Because we want to make it easier for a person to do tshuva. If you make it so difficult for him to do tshuva, he's going to have to demolish his house. He's not going to do tshuva. So the Chachamim said that suspended the din, and they said that instead of demolishing the house, just take the value of that beam and pay the person you stole from. Then there's a fourth din. Valchates hagazula. Let's say you have it's an incredible thing. A man stole an animal, and he's and now he wants to be very religious. So he was Machal Shabbos, and he wants to use that animal as his korban. So, and not everybody knows that it was stolen. The rabbi, it was known that he's a crook, but many people didn't know that this animal was stolen. And b'di'eved, so then we find out it was stolen. Shehi mechaperes, we tell the crook that you don't have to bring another korban, even though you were not coining this animal. You took somebody else's animal and brought it as a korban katas. You don't have to bring a new korban. Because we want to make it easier on the mizbeach. The Gemara is going to discuss what that means. Amar Rava said, from the testimony of Rabbi Yochanan ben Gagayda, we could say the following thing, and the idea is that a person can divorce his wife against her will. That's obvious. But Amar le'edim, Rava said, say to Edim, Ru'u getzet shani noisin law. He tell the Edim, I'm giving my wife a get. So the Edim are watching, you're giving a piece of paper, and that's the get. The chazva amala, and he tells the girl, his wife, oh, by the way, kinsi shtar chayvzeh. This is just a debt instrument. He didn't say it's a get. Harezu mugareshes, it's mugareshes, because this woman, his wife, didn't know it's a get. She's thinking that it's a debt instrument, but it's mugareshes because you don't need her to be aware that she's receiving a get. Rabbi Yochanan ben Gagayda said that if you're married to a chereshes, a deaf mute, she doesn't have to have the intelligence to know she's receiving a get. So even if you're married to an intelligent woman, you don't have to tell her that the paper that you're giving her is a get. You don't need her knowledge, awareness that she is receiving a get. So therefore, it's a kosher get, even though the wife is not aware she's receiving a get. So the Gemara says, Pshita, what's Rava coming to teach us? It's obvious. Because Mahu the same, I would have thought, Kevin the Amar, since he said to the woman, Kinsi shtar choivzeh, he mislabeled it. He's called it a debt instrument. So even though he told the Eidim, oh, watch this, I'm giving a get to my wife, but by saying that it's a dead instrument, maybe he changed his mind. Batuli Batle, he nullified the get, then he's changing his mind. Kamash Malam, that we don't, it's still a good get, because Isa the Batli, if he wanted to change his mind, Le'edin Hama Amalahu, he should have told the Eidim, oh, by the way, I'm changing my mind. I don't want to give this get to my wife. And just, it's a piece of paper. Let's consider it nothing. Why did he tell his wife it's a shtar chayv? If he wants to give a get, why did he tell his wife that it's a dead instrument? Mishum Kisufa, he's embarrassed to tell his wife that I'm giving you a get, so he says it's a shtar chayv. But really, his intention is to give a get. The Mishnah said, Val Ketana Bas Yisrael, a Ketana who's a Yisraelis is married to a Kohen, she could eat truma, even if she was married only midrabanan. The ilu, says the Gemara, chayreshes, but let's say she was a deaf mute that's married to a Kohen, loy achla, she cannot eat truma, even though it's also a kedushin derabanan. My tama, what's the reason? Why, if one kedushin rabbanan, a ketana marrying a kohen, you say she could eat truma, and a chereshes marrying a kohen, an imbecile marrying a kohen, she can't eat truma. The answer is I'm afraid that you might have a kohen who is a cherish, who's marrying a chereshes, and there this kohen who's a cherish will give his wife who's a chereshes, one imbecile marrying another imbecile. She'll give a truma. So the Gemara says, "V'leicha, what's the problem with that? Let her eat. Cotton oichel nevelisu. It's a cotton that's eating in nevelus. When a cotton eats something treif, we don't have to stop him from eating. And if an imbecile is eating truma and she's not supposed to eat truma, there shouldn't be nothing wrong with that. So the answer is okay. So the Gemara says like this: Gezerah shemayachal cherish bechareshes. We are afraid that that we don't want when a cherish, when the kohen is a cherish, let's say the kohen is an imbecile, and he marries, a lucky guy, he married an intelligent woman. We don't want him to give his wife truma. Why? Because it's only a truma, only a marriage drabanan. Im cherish cannot marry an intelligent woman midaraisa. Okay, so the Gemara says in that case, lechel betruma derabanan. Let him feed his wife truma derabanan. Why? What's the problem? The answer is gezerah shema asalachule betruma daraisa. We might either the kohen who's a cherish may come to give his wife truma daraisa. So therefore, the truma daraisa. In that case, he's married only kedushin rabanan. It's no good. So therefore, we said anytime you have a cherish in the equation of the marriage, whether he's the whether he is the kohen is the cherish or the woman is the chereshes, we don't allow them to eat truma. On the other hand, when a katana is married to a kohen who is a gadol, even though the kedushin is only drabanan, he'll feed a truma drabanan, because I'm never going to make the gezerah. Maybe the kohen who's a katan will marry a woman that's a gadola, because that can't happen. So it's only a one-sided way it can happen, where the man, the kohen is an adult, and he's marrying a 7-year-old, so he'll be careful only to give her truma derabanan, not truma daraisa, and that's why there's no gezerah over there. So again, if a kohen is an adult and marries a 7-year-old, of course the kedushin is only drabanan, but he can give her truma derabanan, and he doesn't have to give her truma daraisa. Then we learned in the Mishnah, if you stole a beam and built it into a house, you don't have to demolish the house. You just turn rabbanan. Not everybody agreed with that. If you stole a beam and you built it into a house, Beishamai says, Mekakaya kol habira. You have to demolish the entire house. Kula umachsa merish lebarak. Rabbi Shammai is very strict. Knock the whole building down. You stole the beam and now return it to its owner. No. You only have to return the beam itself. You don't have to return the beam itself. You just give him the value, the money value of the beam, because we want to make it easier for a person to do tshuva. So therefore, we're not requiring him to knock his house down in order to return the beam. Then the Mishnah said, fascinating thing again. I hold it's fascinating. You have a guy who steals an animal and wants to use it as a korban chattas. He was Mechala Shabbos, he feels from, so he steals an animal and he brings it as a korban. The Mishnah says that it's a good korban as long as nobody knows that it was a stolen animal. Ma'ula. So Ula said, Dvar Torah, Mina Torah. bein noida, bein loy noida, ein mechaperes. Really, whether anybody knows about it or nobody knows about it, this animal should not bring a kapara, because really it's a stolen animal, and the crook that stole it, doesn't own it. So how did the crook get a kapara? Why doesn't the crook own it? Yesh kedi loikani. Just because the original owner gave up hope, that is not enough to transfer the ownership to the person that stole it. It has to have a shinui to it. It has to change its location. But just yesh alone doesn't make the person that stole the animal, doesn't make it his animal. And therefore, really, if he brought it as a carbon, he wasn't yaitse. So so then why is it if that we say that if nobody knows it's really stolen, we let the guy that brought the carbon, the crook that stole the animal, get the kapara? Why? It's really not his carbon. So Ula explained that we don't want the kahanim to be sad, because it turns out if we say that it's not a good carbon, then the kahanim who ended up eating that carbon chatas that this person brought, it turned out they were eating something that's chulin that was a non-kosher animal, non-carbon, and therefore we don't want the kahanim to be upset. So the Rabbanan said, the Rabbanan with Hefker, Bezdin Hefker said it really belongs to the ganef, and therefore it's a good carbon. And they said that the person doesn't have to bring a new carbon. The Gazlan doesn't have to bring even a new carbon. He was Yaitse. Amalei Rabbanan Ula. Then Rabbanan said to Ula, we learned in our Mishnah that the reason is not because the Kahanim are sad. It's because to make them as Beach, people should want to bring carbonis, not to slow the process down. So Ula explained, even the Kahanim at Savin, since the Kahanim are going to be nervous that they're eating from a carbon that's a ganav the carbon, the Kahanim are going to refuse to do the service. Why? Because they may come to do an Aveira. So we tell them, no, even if the guy stole a carbon, as long as nobody knows about it, it's a good carbon. So therefore, because if the Kahanim are going to be upset, it's in the Skeach Bato. No, the Kahanim are not going to work anymore in the base of Mikdash. So we say, no, Kahanim, you didn't do any Aveira. The Eved, this carbon is a kosher carbon. That's the opinion of Ula. Rabbi Yehuda Amar Yehuda said, Devar Torah, Mina Torah, Bein Noida or Bein Loy Noida Mechaperes. Whether the guy knows about it, whether everybody knows it's a carbon or not, it still brings a kapara. My timer, what's the reason? Because the Gazlan stolen animal, now he gets a kapara. Yes, Yesh Kidi Koine. Rabbi Yehuda says as soon as the original owner gave up hope of finding the animal, the person that stole it, it's his carbon now. And he was Yaitza. We go to Nunhem and Beis. Then why do we say Eina Mechaperes? Why does the Mishnah say that if everybody knows it's a stolen animal, that we say it's not a good carbon, and the Gazlan has to bring a new carbon? So the people shouldn't say that the Mizbeach is eating stolen food. So once everybody knows it's a stolen animal, it's like a Chilul Hashem that everybody's seeing, the Mizbeach accepts stolen money. Bishlaba, so the Gemara asks a question. Bishlaba Ula said that Yish alone is not koina. That's why the Mishnah says only if a chatas is stolen and it's not known, so then we say that it's mechaper. El Rav Yehuda, according to Rav Yehuda, my iri chatas afila oilaname. Why does the Mishnah say that it's only by chatas it's a kosher carbon, even by carbon oil it's a kosher carbon? Because really it's always a kosher carbon. According to Rav Yehuda, as the Gazlan really owns the animal because the original owner gave up hope in finding it, so it really belongs to the Gazlan. So why does the Mishnah only say that if it's chatas that's stolen, it's okay? So the Gemara says, Loimi boya kama. The Mishnah doesn't need to tell you these things. Loimi boya oil the cholol, not only an oil, which is totally on the Mizbeach, right? But an oil that's totally on the Mizbeach. However, if it's known as a stolen carbon, right, then we don't allow the guy to bring it. We tell him, don't be makar of such a carbon. If John Gotti walked in, but if it's a big ganef came in and we know it's a stolen animal, we stop the guy from bringing the carbon. Why? Because you're going to put this whole oil on the mizbeach. It's a chilul Hashem. Ella afil chatas nami. But even the carbon chatas, a guy brings an animal that everybody knows he stole it, we won't accept it from it. Why? The chelev adamu disalka mizbeach. Even though only there's a little piece of it going on the mizbeach, the fats and the blood, the idach, but the rest of it carbon, kahanim achlim, the kahanim are eating it. So I would think that since it may not be such a big chilul Hashem, if you bring the carbon on mizbeach, even though everybody knows that this is a stolen animal. The Chacham made a gzeira that if everybody knows it's a stolen animal, don't allow the person to be makriv on the mizbeach. People shouldn't say mizbeach oichel gezeros. The mizbeach eats stolen karbanos. Okay, well, let's just get to the Mishnah and then we'll stop. Tanan, another 2 minutes. Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah. Our Mishnah said that if it's a stolen animal and not everybody knows it's stolen, it brings a kapara, but they tikkun mizbeach because we want the mizbeach to accept karbanos even though it's not the ultimate. Okay, so Bishlam al-Ula, according to Ula, this part of the Mishnah makes perfect sense because it wasn't known to the Chiddush is that really it's the Gazlan was not Yotza, and the Gazlan should have to bring another carbon. But b'diavad, we say that it is a good carbon so that the Kahanim should not be sad, right? El Rabbi Yehuda, according to Rabbi Yehuda, what's the main point? The main point is that if it was noida, if everybody knows about it, it shouldn't bring a kapara. So the Mishnah doesn't tell you that. Ibchama Bayale should tell you the opposite. Really, every stolen carbon brings a kapara, but the chiddush is loy noy. If it was noida, everybody knows about it. We say that we don't accept such a carbon because it's a chilul Hashem. So the Mishnah doesn't say that. So the Gemara says we'll have to read it into the Mishnah. Hachinami kamer. This is what the Mishnah says. Loy noida mechaperes. Noida ein mekaperes. If nobody knows it's stolen, then we let the carbon get slide because anyway it belongs to the crook because according to Rav Yehuda, yesh is kaina. Noida, but if everybody knows it's stolen, now the crook is trying to bring this carbon. We tell him hold it. Ein mekaperes. It's not. There's no kapara here, but they tikkun a mizbeach because this is not the right thing to bring on the mizbeach. It's a chilul Hashem. One more thing, Masiv Rava. Rava said like this. Gone we have a brisa that says a man stole an animal, the higdish, and made it hegdish. Okay, then he it's a hegdish animal. He shechted it, or he sold the animal. Now, normally, if you steal something and you shecht and sell it, you have to pay 4 and 5. But here, you made it hegdish in between. So he stole it and then make it hegdish. You pay double, but you don't pay 4 and 5. The Tana Allah. And we learned on this brisa. Nevertheless, you made it hegdish and you shechted it outside the base of Mikdash. You're gonna die young for such an avera. Okay. So now here, one more minute. If you say that yish weren't kaina, in other words, yish alone does not make it the ganav's animal, right? So the guy's stolen animal was magdish it and shechted it outside the base of Mikdash, but it's not even his animal. The hegdish doesn't even work because it's not his animal. So why could there be an einish karis? Karis mayavidite. How could you be an einish karis if you're shechting it outside the base of Mikdash when it's not even your animal? It's not yours. It must be like Rabbi Yehuda, who holds that yish alone would make it your animal, and the hegdish is a good hegdish, and it's a shchite chutz. So the Gemara answers, Amar Shezbi, Karis Midavreim. Yechayev Karis, the Rabbanan said Yechayev Karis. So what do you mean? Achichalei Karis Midavreim Yeika. Can the Rabbanan give somebody Karis? There's no such thing. Karis is a deraisa concept, not a Rabbanan concept. Amalu Rava. So Rava defended Rav Shezbi. Gava Rabba Amamilza, when somebody says something, a great person, Loi Techichala, don't laugh at him. The Rabbanan made it that you'll get a Koris deraisa. The Rabbanan put it in the Ganav's, the Rabbanan who have the ultimate power called Hefker, Bezdin Hefker, can say that the item technically should not belong to the crook. But since this crook had the chutzpah to make it Hegdish, now it's in his Rishus. It belongs to the animal belongs to the Gazlan. Should he shecht it, chutz the Beis HaMikdash, he's going to die young. He's going to get kares. That's the power of the Rabbanan. But Amar Rabba finished one thought and he said, "Havade kami boili." But I have still one more question. When the rabbis said it belongs to the Ganav, even though it technically should not belong to the Ganav because it's just Yish, but when the Rabbanan said it belongs to the Ganav, Bishas Geneva, do they say that it belongs to the Ganav from the time that he stole it? or mishas hegdesha, from the time that he made it hegdish. What's the difference? If it gave birth, or the shearings, who does that belong to? If you say mishas geneva, from the time that it's stolen, so if it gave birth after it was stolen, it really belongs to the ganav, because Chachamim said that this animal, although it belongs to the ganav, so if it gave birth, it belongs to the ganav. But if you said that it was only the ganav's hands, it only becomes the ganav's when he makes it hegdish, well, that's much later. Then the vlados and the shearings belong to the original owner. What's the din? Hadama Rava answered, Mistabra Mishas Hegdesha. It belongs to the ganav when he made it hegdish. Because the Chachamim, even though Yish alone is not koina according to Ula, Chachamim said that if you're going to go have the chutzpah as a ganav to make it hegdish, it's now yours. It's your animal. It's your animal only from when you make it hekdesh. So you shouldn't be a chayte that's profitable. So until that time, it really belongs to its original owner, and therefore all the gizes and vlades belong to the original owner. Okay, Bez Hashem, tomorrow, and we're going to do the next daf. I think I said